doesn't look like there's any for arms. So if there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the vouchers.
We have the
Yeah,
motion.
yeah, motion in a second.
Yeah, sorry about that. Take the vote. Where are we here? Mrs. DeTore, you're up first.
Yes.
Mr. Preston?
I allowed to with the voucher.
You should just abstain.
Abstain.
Yeah, okay. And Mr. Bates?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to old business. We went ahead and put the topic of park planning based on some discussions we had at the last board meeting. In your board packet, you have a few inclusions in the board packet. I went ahead and updated the parks versus property spreadsheet I presented at the January board meeting and listed some of the third-party agreements there. You also have a life of a park planning project that shows the 2-year planning process that we utilize. An update from park biologist Paul Pira. He will start working on some of the land use classifications and a memo from Matt McHugh on our 5-year plan for park capital improvement projects. This is just for discussion, so we're going to open it up to the board for any questions or any discussion.
No, I appreciate the outline for the planning process. I think we're going to be talking about that anyways, so I'll see. So, because this is kind of a build upon, and there's going to be a lot, are we going to see probably for the next couple months updates added to this?
Paul's here. You want to
Sure.
give an update on the processes you utilize?
Sure. Back in 2014, I originally did some land cover analysis for the park district using GIS, Geographic Information System. It's a program and a very powerful program that a lot of folks use in conservation planning. But the data originally came from in 2012 and 13, an organization called the Lake Erie Game Partnership hired another firm to do a bunch of land cover analysis for the region. And so I used that data. And of course, we've grown a little bit, so things have changed a little bit here at the Park District since then. So I'm just going to be revisiting that and trying a couple of other techniques out and maybe even doing some more work, hand digitizing and things like that to work on the data. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but
Yeah, for sure.
it's worthwhile revisiting. So.
And Paul, do you recall when we did in 2012, in general, what the area was? It was in natural areas? Percentage-wise, acres-wise?
Yeah, I mean, it was well over, I believe, about 80 to 90% at least was unmanaged or natural areas.
That's, I mean, I think I've seen that, but if that's still accessible, even though you're working on a new version, it'd be nice for these guys to see, to compare, you know,
Okay.
if you have it.
You resurrect that old?
Sure, yeah, I have it.
Any other questions?
No, we're gonna talk about the other planning projects potential later, right? On the list?
But no, it's all part of this.
It's all part of
this.
this.
Yes, yes.
So, it's not, so the capital improvements, like we're not gonna talk about later, or it's this part of this?
No, it's part of this. Yes.
Oh, okay, then I guess that is. I'm looking at just beyond this page right here. Where it goes into like potential, like how they just started discussing the potential.
Yes.
So and I completely understand this is just like a first thing, right? You guys have a lot more planning, a lot more things to consider, a lot more things to prioritize, et cetera. So by no means do I, think that this is a final whatever. But it's interesting, I know that you guys can't hold up what your planning is, but knowing that we have what Paul's gonna produce for us and where we're at, maybe something to consider, as well as that list of parks that you guys gave us, and there are, half that are undeveloped or don't have anything. And of those half of them are restricted and you can't do anything with them, but half of them are unrestricted. So I'm just curious if there's any type of thought or consideration, and I've said this once, I've said it 1,000 times, some of these smaller parks, potentially doing something like we have with Wooden Road up here, where we didn't really necessarily even put a trail in. We just put aggregate parking and benches for viewing, or very simplicity, things to do to make them accessible for scenery viewing, and maybe there is a half-mile loop in some of them, or maybe not, but I'm just curious if that is even anything on your guys' horizon. I mean, it seems like something like Wooden would be a very minimal, even an in-house job type of thing. If that's something that we could consider doing one a year or one every couple, I don't know. Is that even on the radar or a thought, or?
I would say that we've structured the 5-year plan around our current resources, and what I mean by that is just the maintenance standards of cutting the grass, weeding the flower beds. So there are newer things on there based on like older infrastructure. Say for example, replacing Swine Creek Lodge perhaps, or so we've tried to combine, and I may not be completely answering your question, but we try to combine the parks that are not yet accessible to the public, like Walton's Gorge, like Veterans Legacy Woods, with at the same time prioritizing the infrastructure that still needs attention. I guess in general, we haven't gone back to older parks and open new trails. One of the things, and Matt can probably comment on a little bit, is the planning staff is updating master plans on some of the older parks. And a master plan would take a holistic look, say Swine Creek, for example. The roof leaks on the lodge, it's 60 years old, it's time to replace that lodge. And the master plan will also look at trails to be open, trails to be closed, new trails, so it's all part of the planning process. So.
And I completely respect that, but this is all going into already 2025. So, we're 5 years out.
Right.
And yet, what I don't want to see is what happened with a 20-year property that sat there and did nothing.
Sure.
We have a ton of properties, and I get it. Some of these smaller ones, it doesn't make sense, and some of them are restricted, and that's absolutely fine. But I drive by like this morning, and every single time I leave here, I look at Wooden Road, and it seems to me like that was probably such a minimal project to make accessible. Now, there aren't even trails there or anything, but that couldn't have cost us a couple $1,000s to open that up and make it a few parking spaces and some picnic tables to enjoy a piece of property that's sitting there. So I'm just curious if even in 5 years out, we can't do these $5,000 or $10,000 small things just to open them up. I mean, we don't even have signs at some of these places that say that they're even owned by the parks, let alone, a spot to have a picnic. So I'm just, maybe I'm a one-man group up here, but it seems 5 years out, like at least we should have 1 or 2 of these spots in here.
And one of the things that we try to do, and Matt and I have talked at length about this, is take the places like what is now Clarendon Woodlands, former Eber High property, and it sat for a long time. So we've tried to prioritize them that way.
Right.
So, where things like Middlefield Wetlands, it hasn't been sitting as long, and to keep these things moving through the process of accessibility and public access. So, specific to Wooden Road, it's only 3 acres, so,
Right.
yeah. And just take the bigger picture, if you will, like 180 acres of Veterans Legacy Woods, or like the spectacular gorge at Walton's Gorge, and prioritizing within that that context. And perhaps Paul or Matt have something to add.
So as John mentioned, we are kind of going through, so probably in the last 11 years since I've been here, since 2008, we've pretty much opened a park, I think, almost every year on average. So some of the master plans we're looking at prioritizing and updating. I mean, we're going back to Swine Creek, some of the older parks that may not even have a master plan. So we're looking at, like John said, kind of aging infrastructure, what needs to be updated, signage, all kinds of amenities.